Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, it's 6 o'clock for y'all already. It's kicked off. Let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Commission Court of Talbot County to order. Let the record reflect that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. And Madam Clerk, has it been posted according to the requirements?
Yes, sir, it has.
Both on the publication board outside as well as website, true?
Yes, sir.
With that being said, gentlemen and participants, it is the practice of this court to open our meeting with a spoken invocation followed by a pledge of allegiance to either or both the state and national flag. And if any present wishes not participate in either or both of these practices, feel welcome to either mute your line if you're following audio, or step out of the room and then rejoin us upon the completion of the practice. The commissioners rotate the leading of this practice, and today's commissioner is Commissioner Stirk.
Yes, sir. He's out with COVID.
Okay.
I'll step in.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
okay. Then Commissioner Blacksher, if you will provide for our pledge and vote.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this day and your many blessings. I pray, Lord, that you just be with us, guide us, lead us, and Lord, just thank you so much for the love you show us each day and the forgiveness that we have in you. And I just thank you for another day of life and pray that you just be with us, guide us, lead us, and help us in the decisions we make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let's move into our portion of the agenda, public comments, and we have two that have signed up for public comments. And Sal Valville, you be first.
Ladies and gentlemen of the court, I appreciate your time once again. As you know, I'm Sal Valdovinos. I represent the idiots and so-called concerned citizens of Tyler County. I'm going to yield my time to Mr. Holman. If I could now, please pass some things out to you guys.
Sure.
That'd be all right. Would you keep calling what you got? One, two, if you don't mind, that's fine. It's a lot simpler. And I will give one to Josh. I could have someone Thank you, sir. And there's nothing on, I'll give you a job. This is one I need to get a job as well. Can I get one of those from you? Two here. This is the one I need. So I received an email yesterday, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you guys about. I did turn in a public information request to Jacques Blanchette, our county judge, as well as our county treasurer, Leanne Mock, a couple of days ago, because I was, one of our concerned citizens, by the way, I don't think that much, she's in the room today, I did not know she was going to be here. She had sent, while I was out of town, she had requested some information, this down here, from you guys, I guess in general, concerning questions about when and if there were conversations that took place with regard to the employee handbook, right? Someone asking if they could run for a position. Everybody knows what that's about. Personally, I think that was the request itself. I think there could have been a little bit more specific. I think ideally what the person is looking for is were there ever any permissions that had to be asked for in light of the fact that at that point in time there was something in the manual that perhaps even though it was had been deemed not supposed to be on there anymore. I think that's what she's looking for. That's not why I'm necessarily here, but that's what prompted this. She received an email from a law firm, Iglesias Law Firm, that said they now represent, and I'm reading directly from this, represent Tyler County, Texas, and its auditor with respect to the open records request of 936. That makes it sound like it's very specific to that particular request. Right after that, I put a public, well, not right after that, I had to get my feet back on the ground, sent a public information request asking specifically what our position was in hiring another attorney. And this is, let me see if I can find it here real quick. Bear with me, I know I need a lot of my time on this, one. Take a second. My email basically was asking two things. Number one, who has the authority to do that without coming through the court? I've been very astute in attending Commissioner's Court. I've looked at all the minutes, and I didn't see that. I was under the impression things like that had to go through the court. It was also concerning to me because this email that I received and this comment from this law firm states they're representing the county and the auditor. And I would ask you this: if in fact the citizens of this county, which are the county, decided for some unknown reason to file a grievance against the commissioners or the auditor, wouldn't that be a major conflict if they're representing those folks as well as the county? Didn't understand that. I asked for an answer to that. I would also ask you this, because I received these emails yesterday. And the email was it was a reply all to my query. And it says, I received this email yesterday. As per the auditor's previous correspondence, I believe I'm supposed to forward this type of request to you, correct? This is to Lucas Babbitt. Please advise if that's the case or not. I immediately said, guys, what's going on here? I wanted to find out, in fact, why such a request would be sent to him instead of the governmental body that the public information request was supposed to go to. I sent this out back on May 2nd. This was quite a while ago when someone had some questions about public information requests. This is right out of Chapter 552 of the Local Government Code. The word governmental entity is mentioned, a governmental body is mentioned 14 times in here. The only time the DA is mentioned is at the very end, tail end of this, for complaints regarding failure to release public information and talking about in a timely response. Because there's some time to be able to contact your county or district attorney. I also understand this was also by call that I made to one of the county officials, because I'm like, guys, this doesn't make any sense. Why in the world are we going through Lucas with all of our public information requests? The government code plainly states the governmental bodies. That's the individuals that we're asking. I'm asking from the treasurer, the auditor, the commissioner, doesn't be what they're referring to. I got this. I spoke with Lucas about an open record request that I received. This was a matter of an email that was between several people. He said all public information requests should be sent to him before we respond. And that's different than this. I can understand certainly a situation where there might be something sensitive where our county attorney, which is Lucas, would need to possibly look at it to redact something. But as far as it going to him first, before we even decide if we're going to answer it, I don't think that's the way. And of course, I do have this from Lucas, and it states, Jackie, please make sure all public record requests are forwarded to me. Thank you. It's not quite as direct as this, what I just read, but nonetheless, it's there. So I have asked for someone to provide me and the citizens with the statute or the code that allows for the hiring of another attorney without that being approved through the court. If there's, I guess, in the financial world, we'd say a Z account, a slush fund for somebody. That doesn't really exist in the realm that you guys are in, because you have to answer to the citizens for that, and you're responsible for that money goes. But it would almost, I would almost be of the assumption that if that is the case and someone just arbitrarily can hire somebody and they say they're representing the county and that particular person, that would have had to go through you guys. Am I missing something? So at any rate, I have turned in a public information request. I did send that to the county judge and county treasurer, who's not here. I did not send it to each individual commissioner because I was under the impression they could give me that information. Maybe I missed it. They certainly would be privy to it. Certainly the treasurer, since those funds being paid to an outside legal source, would have to go through her office, correct? That's why I did that. So at any rate, I know my time, even though Sal was good enough to give me his, I wanted to make sure I didn't go over. I wanted to just get that on the record this morning because I do want answers to that, and I think the citizens deserve them. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that'll conclude our public comment section, and that will take us to Roman numeral 2. Mike, any desire to pull anything off the table items, or want to go ahead and pass on it?
I actually spoke to Ms. Neal, and I'm willing to do that. She needs somebody ASAP, and I mean, I don't know if the
Well, I'm make a motion to appoint Joe.
Good, thank you.
Second.
There's a motion with second on the table item for the appointment of Commissioner Blacksher to serve in that open position for the elected official on the Tri-County Community Action Board. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? And motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Joe, and thank you. We'll take us to item number 3, and that's the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, I'm not aware of any minutes.
No,
that you
that'll
want us
be
to
there.
act on.
Regular meeting.
Okay, good deal. And we have no monthly reports. It takes us to Roman numeral 4, and it's any resolutions and proclamations or orders. And I'm not aware of any. That'll take us to item number 5, and that's consider, approve, and informational section. Item A, and Commissioner Blacksher.
Yes, sir. Hiring professional engineering services from Goodwin Lasser Strong in Lufkin, Texas to review and approve the Lakeland Ranch Section 3 subdivision application. I put that in form of a motion.
Second. There's a motion second.
And I was contacted by the developers, and they're fixing to give us Section 3. Have they given it to you? Okay. So they said Monday they were going to turn it in, so it's coming. So we need to have that in place to review and approve.
Okay, good. Any additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. And it sounds unanimous. Item B, Commissioner Blacksher, you also have.
Sir, purchase right-of-way of 2 tracts of land from 3 Tree Southern Grove LLC and Talavera Timber LP out of right-of-way fund. Land being in the Joseph Peters Survey A511 and Richard Smith Survey A584 along County Road 1700 at Kimball Creek Crossing. Will be dedicated to the county for perpetual use as a roadway. I put that in the form of a motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. There is a second. Comments or questions?
Judge, did you get a copy of this? This is the bridge project on Kimball Creek. It's a match project. The bridge is almost to condemnation now, so the state's gonna get us a bridge, and we just did the match work the other day. But anyways, on the Talavera Timber, they've requested $2,500 for the purchase of that right of way. And on the, 3 Tree, they've requested $5,500. And, the attorney told me to put that in the minutes. So, that's what the price is going to be for those 2 pieces of property.
Can you repeat those?
Yes, $2,500 for Talavera Timber,
Okay.
and for 3 Tree Southern Growth LLC, $5,500.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions? All in favor, aye. Any opposed? And there's none. Okay. Any comments by court members pertaining to matters of county government? Hearing none, is there anything for executive session?
No, sir.
Commissioner? Okay. All right. Shall we go ahead and adjourn from this meeting? If
Yes,
so,
sir.
is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. Your second. All in favor, aye? Okay. And we do have a workshop scheduled for 10:15, so that would be in exactly 1 minute. So good timing.
Judge, at the 10-14 adjournment.
10:14, yes, sir. Um,
10:15, Judge.
All right, so is there a motion to go into workshop?
So moved.
Second? Okay, Bud, thank you. All right, it's 10:15. This meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. It is a workshop, and with that being said, we have an item on the agenda, and it's subdivision regulations application process.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Mr. Jed is here. He's going to kind of guide us through this.
Wish.
That's Jed. Okay. And I put the face with first, put the name.
Here, two of them.
How are you?
Good.
Okay, so I'm not being on the phone.
Yes, sir. I should have.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
And Mr. Jed has a grandchild going to be born here pretty soon, so will he take up any,
When did I last talk to you?
well,
Get the short version.
They're gonna do a C-section at noon.
okay. All right.
Exciting day. Y'all mind if I sit down?
Please,
Come,
sir.
sir. Have a seat. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go over here or hosted a workshop before, but I just,
We'll see you here, granddaughter in a workshop.
I'll tell you what, I
We're
mean,
here for this workshop.
I've got one answer to these. Okay. Didn't have a chance to proofread this, so y'all please disregard if I've got any typos on it, but, just normally, I am Jed Morris, I'm a Goodwin Master and Strong. Number one, I want to express my appreciation for the opportunity to help y'all regarding review of subdivisions, any recommendations you may need on your subdivision regulations, and just to work with you closely as part of the county team to make sure that any development that comes into the county happens in an orderly process, that it's fair, it's equitable, it's fair to all the developers, and as development happens, which we welcome, I assume, for the most part, it's development we want. It's good for the county, it's good for the folks that are developing. So, just a little, first of all, do we have any time constraints this morning regarding, anybody need to be out of here, sir? Okay, I'll try to.
Yeah, I may slip out a little bit, but.
Okay. I've got a little bit of an agenda that I passed out to you, just for y'all to take notes on, asking questions, whatever, stop me at any time. And I'd like for this to be a discussion and interchange, if you will, but just sort of make sure we're rolling in the same direction on these subdivisions. But, first of all, wanted to note that we've worked with the county before, with Goodwin, Laster and Strong, on grant projects that may come along, and have worked for y'all in the capacity of a consultant who was designing things for the county, helping you through projects. This is a little different capacity for us as far as the development goes. We've done it before. I guess the first ones that wanted us to do it formally was Polk County. And they started that up a couple of years ago when the state changed the laws regarding the subdivisions. That there were some time constraints in there that we really got to adhere to, and the process is a little different. And I see, just reading between the lines, there was a developer out there who had some pull, and he got the laws changed, putting the onus on the county to effectively move these applications forward, and it really put a lot of the power in the hands of the developer, and so it puts us back on our heels. We've got to have our ducks in a row when we get presented a subdivision. So, but we don't normally do that. We're advising y'all just in looking at subdivision, making sure that we're keeping with the subdivision regulations. So this is not something we're hired gun for. We do it, as a consultant, helping the county on other things, we're available and have a relationship with the county. But, let me just walk through the process, and y'all probably familiar with this. If you looked at any depth at the subdivision regulations or the local government code that requires us to do it a certain way. I will say this, the regulation y'all developed is in very good keeping with the law that was passed a few years ago for the regulations. But usually, and I'm just going to talk in generalities, I have my copy here if we need to refer to that. But first thing, let's say I have a subdivision, and I want to put a subdivision in the county, I want to contact my county commissioner, go over it with them. That would be y'all as informal at this stage. And just, you'll look over what he's proposing and sort of steer that developer in the right direction. I guess the most important thing is to let them know that we do have a subdivision regulations and we expect them to adhere to that. And they'll go there, they'll read through it, see what they need to provide. I would be careful not to tell them exactly what they want. Just refer them to that regulation and let them provide it. The moment that they go formal is when they come to the county clerk. And I'm assuming they will come straight to, will they come straight to you when they?
Yeah.
They'll submit that to the county clerk, that application. That's a little bit of a misnomer, the word application. The application is more of an application packet. We do not have a formal application. We list in the regulations everything that's required to be filed. The biggest of those is the plat. That plat is what we're going through, picking through, making sure all the ducks are in a row. And at the end of the day, when it's finally approved, that plat is filed in the county clerk's office where it will be from here on out. So that's the whole process, is to get that plat approved. But we don't have an actual application. A lot of items there in the regulations. From the moment that they submit that application packet, they will pay their deposit at that point. We have 10 business days to notify them specifically of anything that's missing from that application. And that's a big deal, getting it, and I think it's real important that you refer them to the county clerk when you do get one. That way it gets stamped in, there's no doubt as to when it officially got here and the time clock starts. So from that point, the county clerk, if I'm going to review it, and I don't have to review all applications. I think I think it's a good idea. That's up to y'all. If y'all don't send it to me and don't review it, y'all can pass it through on your own, and I'm never part of it. But from my clock, I may receive it 3-4 days later after it's received by the county clerk. But we've still got 10 days to let them know if something's missing. So the later I receive it, the less time I've got to review it and let them know if something's missing. But,
Jed, is that 10 calendar days or 10 working days?
10 calendar days. So it's really important for her to be able to get that application to me if I'm going to review it just as soon as she possibly can. And then we usually do that by email. I noticed this morning we were on the agenda to get hired and review the Section 3 of Lakeland Estates, or Lakeland Ranch. That could, doing it that way could, so this is just something y'all might want to consider, is maybe setting up some sort of process where I'm going to call for that. We already have the arrangements for those, and that as soon as y'all receive the review fees, y'all already approved me to review it for, say, this calendar year or next 2 calendar years or whatever. That would help streamline the process possibly.
Yes, sir. And we put in our packet, we amended it a while back to pass those fees to the developer. So when they turn in, according to the packet, they'll be responsible for those fees and then be refunded, the fees that we didn't use. So,
Right.
so that's already in.
Okay, good.
Jeff, who's your backup in the event that you're unavailable?
Good question. Jeremy Ogilvy.
He has the same credentials to.
He does not. And usually the way our process works, so far it's been mainly just me and Jeremy. Jeremy is an engineering technician, very familiar with the industry, very familiar with the regulations.
Yes, sir.
When we receive an application, as soon as I get it from Kelly, I go ahead and set up the job number. So we start charging our time, printing, mileage, which is rare, to that job. And, but as soon as I set up the job number, I will forward it to Jeremy Oakley there in our office. And Jeremy will go through the regulations, check through the checklist and see anything that's missing, and we'll go ahead and draft a letter. And the idea is to sort of streamline this process, have it ready for me to look at. And then usually from there, I have it, it's just me. I'm looking over it, I'm reviewing the letter, making any modifications to it. I'll look at the plat and see if there's anything that stands out for me. And rarely, well, most of the time it's incomplete.
Most of them.
Most of the time, the application is incomplete. Something missing from it that we cannot consider it complete. And at that point, I need to notify, or the county needs to notify the developer that there's something missing. So I will usually at that point go ahead and send an email to Kelly and carbon copy the developer and the commissioner, notifying them specifically what is missing. Now, sometimes there's so much missing that I won't be able to identify everything that's missing until I get those additional items and look at. So that could stretch that out a bit. It's not until we get a complete application that you'll even have to go as a commission.
And that's some of that, some of that area where,
So
you know,
does the 10 days start after the completed application, or does
No.
it start when they file
We've got 10 days to 10 calendar days to notify them from the moment that we receive the last outstanding item, then your 30 calendar day when it starts. So that's to avoid having to bring something to y'all that's not ready to be ready.
Yeah.
And I guess at this phase of the engineering review, and that's when most of my time happens, I'm going to be working real closely with Kelly and making sure that we get any outstanding items identified and in place. So the moment we receive that last outstanding item, then your 30-day calendar day starts. And from that day, you have 30 days to make, and I skipped over a little bit here. Yeah, I didn't proofread. Look down at number 3, the second item. Sorry about that. But it says court decision. It's right in the very middle of the page. So you've got 30 days after we have declared the application complete to make one of 3 actions. You'll either approve it unconditionally, which is rare. Usually at very minimum, they're gonna have to bring in the final copies of the plat, but there will be conditions. You can approve it with conditions, which is usually if we reach this point, everything's gonna be taken care of, or you're gonna reject it. And if we reject it, if we have conditions, we spell those out specifically. It'll be based on a letter that I provide to you. It'll reference the pieces of the subdivision regulations. If we reject it, we have to specifically say one. So, now let's say we approve with conditions. At that point, well, there's actually, the time clock is in the favor of the developer throughout this whole process, with some exception regarding construction. If we get an incomplete application, let them know, hey, I'm missing the county health department's certification on the plat. they might go back and hold, or take 6 months to get that taken care of and bring back to us. We can't give them, we can't stipulate a time that they gotta have it back. Same way with the conditions. If we approve it with the conditions, they could hold it practically indefinitely before they meet that condition and bring it back and say, okay, I'm ready, now I'm ready for final approval. Where they could get a little bit sticky is when, we make modifications to the regulations in the meantime. And I think any attorney is going to back us up from the standpoint of, we've got to hold them to the regulations that were current at the time they submitted the application. So they can hold it for another year and meet the last condition and then come back and say, all right, here it is, I'd like final approval. And at that point, we've got to verify that they meet that condition, we will give them final approval. And I'm gonna circle back to that in just a minute, when we talk about the whole process. At the time that they submit their last outstanding condition for approval, at that point, we've got another clock that starts, and that's the 15 calendar days. We have 15 calendar days to accept or approve that, application having met all conditions. So that's the only time that I foresee in this process when we might be calling a special call. Sometimes when I'm looking at it for completion, is the application complete or whatever? I will take that into consideration, the timing of the commissioner's court meeting. If there are a lot of things that need to be done to be able to perform a complete review on it, I'm going to steer toward, look, this is an incomplete application. You need to get all this stuff together before we can perform a review and actually bring it to the court for consideration.
Jim, it is rare, but it is something that I think that we would want for you to be aware of for us. There is an occasion that we would have a 5-day consecutive day closure for fundraiser functions. That would be Christmas Day, because we take the day before, the day after, and if the weekend follows it, so we gotta, just be aware of that. And I think that we would want to be sure that we don't wind up in the fall. Don't you agree with him? So some kind of a backup.
Yeah, we were close to that situation this past year.
We've got to watch that clock.
Yeah.
There's another issue is this, particularly when they're bringing in the conditions. Let's say we've got a normal, you only meet on Tuesdays.
Mondays.
And when does the agenda go out?
Usually
Right.
Friday is the final agenda, goes out 72 hours prior to the meeting.
So you send it out on Friday, and with that, you send the packets, all
Yes,
those
any
backup stuff.
attachments that go with the agenda go out at that time.
Sure. If I get conditions brought in and says, look, here's everything I need, I'm trying to make next commissioner's court, and it comes in Thursday afternoon, like, I might be in the field. I'm not always there ready to review, may have something going, I'm trying to get plans out or whatever. I really need, though, and this is something to share with them, if they're trying to meet the next week's meeting, and they've got things that I need to review to provide your recommendation, they really, the very latest I could have that really is about Wednesday to proceed with. As early as they could would be good, that way I can get y'all proper recommendations, look at it, and you can put it on the agenda. Because I like to have my letter go out with the packet, that way you know.
Are you looking at like 48 hours prior to the agenda
Would be
posted?
Would be good. If they wait till the last minute to bring it in, we may not be able to hear it on that commissioner's court, or you may have to get all the details, following up your packet, to do that. So, it's just a thought, but the only time zone of this whole thing. So, which is another reason that there's gonna be a tendency to help the developers. There's some good developers out there. They're going to be good to work with, they're professional, they know what they're doing, they're spending big money to bring developments into our county. You want to work with them. So we want to help them as much as possible. When I get an application, I want to take my 10 days. I want to get that thing turned around and keep this process moving. I don't want to put y'all in a bind. But I think it's very important that anything that we do have submitted, particularly documents associated with the application, that they come together. We need to keep her in the loop on that. Now, sometimes as it gets into it, I will actually be communicating with their surveyor or their engineer or the developer. And I try to be careful and tell them, look, if we have email communications, we need to keep Kelly in the loop. If you submit documents that are meeting conditions, you need to send them to Kelly, CC me. That way, she is the primary point of contact. We make sure everything, nothing happens document-wise that doesn't come to her. And I'll keep a close eye on that to try to do my best to make sure that she's getting all the documents and she's got all the information associated with this.
So Jim, let me understand. So they walk in with their corrected documents,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's not 48 hours. I mean, it's less than 48 hours.
Send them
Do
to
I send them to you?
Send them to me. I can't reject them because
That was my
if they
question.
miss the posting of the commissioner's court meeting,
Mhm.
that's their problem. The agenda's already out, we can't get them
That's
out.
not gonna mess with our calendar days?
It's, send it to me when you get it.
Okay.
And we'll do our best we can to get them turned around. Sometimes we might need to review them on the weekend, to get y'all a recommendation.
You've done that before.
There are instances we just can't do.
Well, we do have it posted that if we have a deadline, and typically our deadline is 10 o'clock the Thursday prior to the meeting.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could say we didn't meet the deadline for this agenda.
Absolutely, absolutely. They gotta go by the same deadline anybody else would have for putting an item on the agenda.
But I still take those documents? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. They can submit them anytime, but if they miss the deadline, they're not gonna make that meeting. And we may play that by ear, we may have to play that by ear regarding where we're at in the calendar. If we can get it in, can we get it properly looked at to make sure we're doing due diligence and getting something that's okay out there? What I want to avoid, if at all possible, is a special call. We're going to do everything in our part to keep from having a special call meeting. And I think we can do that for the most part. By making sure that before we even bring it to y'all, we have a complete application. That's a huge thing. In all actuality, most of my review is done while I'm making sure they've got a complete application. After that, there's very little to look at. Let me run back to does anybody, have any of y'all done subdivisions under the old rules? Under the old
This is my first go around.
There's gonna be some developers who have, and, a lot of the things I'm seeing common amongst the developers is they breathe a sigh of relief when they leave the Metroplex in the highly populated campus. And they think, well, we can get out here and we can do what we want.
Which can lead to a lot of trouble.
They're under the old, up until they passed this law a few years ago, that put all the power in the development. Or put us back on our heels. The process sort of went like this. They would submit a preliminary plat. We would end engineering plans if they were doing infrastructure and such. The county would look over it, look at the plat, and you're basically approving a preliminary plat. And you're telling the developer, you're giving him a formal action saying your plans and your preliminary plat are approved. You may have some minor changes to them or whatever, but they're approved. That allows them to go out to their financial institution and get funding to go in and build the infrastructure improvements and such. With the confidence for them and their funding agency or their financial institution, that if they spend the money on these improvements, it will be accepted after the improvements are built. And after it's all built, we were okay with it. Y'all checked off on it. This is infrastructure, there's roads and culverts and such, we'll accept. We've got the water system in, everything built. Then they would finalize the plat. So the day that they finalize the plat under this old system, they're ready to sell lots and start building houses and moving into the subdivision, occupy the subdivision. We have provision under the old regulations that if they wanted to go ahead and sell lots before their infrastructure was built, they would have to put up a construction loan. And it never happened. Everybody remembered, it's a pain to get loan for a developer. So what would happen is they would get the preliminary plat approved, build their infrastructure, and then finalize the plat and be able to sell lots. That old, now under the new system, they bring a final plat to us, and the moment we approve it, then they have to put up a bond to go out and build the infrastructure. And then once the infrastructure is approved and we accept or approve the infrastructure, then they have to put up a maintenance bond. So we force the developers into a bonding situation. A lot of them don't like that because they don't want to go out and get a bond, which is basically an insurance policy saying they're going to build this stuff.
But it also, that bond and maintenance bond, it also ensures that the people that buy that property are gonna be protected.
Yes, sir.
That's the whole reason why.
Worst thing we can do with it as a county is approve something, them not follow through with their infrastructure, go out and sell lots, and people realize that, well, this isn't what got promised it would be. And when the lawsuits fly, we all get served. Whether we're guilty or not, we're all gonna have to defend ourselves. So, but under the new process, they can still do it the old way. We can't require them to do it the old way. But a developer could come in, bring his plans, his preliminary plat, we look over, and basically approve it, get to the point that we approve it with conditions. One of those conditions is that you put up your bond and build your infrastructure. He could then go out, rather than going to get the bond, he could then go out and build the infrastructure. And then come to us after the infrastructure is built and say, I would like to request y'all would waive the requirement for a construction bond because my infrastructure has been built in communication with the commissioner. It's done. I would like to request that y'all waive a construction bond and then we put up a maintenance bond for it. In that case, they basically ready to sell lots and occupy the subdivision. So they have the power, the developers do it under the old way because they have that luxury of time is on their side. Any questions so far? Have I rambled too much?
Yeah, it's good, but I'm gonna slip on that.
Okay, if y'all mind, just like to walk over, I'm down on number 4 there, like to walk over some of the hard parts that we've seen so far in learning these subdivisions, but not uncommon. One is water. In the rural areas, these developers are wanting to come in and we're asking them to provide us an assurance from the water supplier that the water supplier will provide the number, be able to provide the build-out capacity for the subdivision. These water companies in our counties here in East Texas are not used to being asked to sign something that was written for them and put their name and commitment on it. And it's hard for the developers to get that commitment from the water company. Most water companies, they've been here since the 60s. They were built by the people who live out there. They're owned by those people, water supply corporations, and they do their things their way. So water has been a very tough tough item to take care of, and I'll talk a little more about that down in model subdivision rules. Topographic survey has been another, and I do not recall, don't we have a requirement for 10-foot increment topographic survey?
I'm not for sure on the.
Let me just speak general to it and just give you some ideas. I know next door, they required, that all subdivisions be provided with 5-foot contour intervals. And that's a problem, because to get those, the traditional way to get those is to have a surveyor go out and do a topographic survey of this property. It may be 100 acres of thicket, and that is an extremely costly thing to get. So a lot of them over next door, they were hiring a firm or multiple firms to use LiDAR data that was collected. It's public information, it's free information that was collected by the government. The latest flyover was about 2017. And they actually, they circumvented that process sort of to make it easier for the developers. I mean, when you go out and do that much topo, you've created some work that's it's good work for the surveyor, but nobody else is really going to use it. You're getting a whole lot of information at a very high price that's not going to be of much use. So the way they circumvented that, if they still wanted those tighter contours, they wound up buying paying a company to provide a county-wide topographic survey at 5-foot contours. And it's from the LiDAR data, and it's just basically a data manipulation. They took the free available data and converted it to a format that the county could use, developers could use, engineers could use. That's something we might think about if that becomes a problem. The topographic survey requirement has historically been a problem with our subdivision regulations. When y'all adopted your regulations, you adopted with it the Texas Water Development Board's model subdivision regulations. And they have those regulations have some very strict requirements with respect to water and wastewater, how you're going to deal with that. A lot of folks have considered those regulations onerous. They're just a lot of requirements that is almost impossible to meet. So the reason the Water Development Board came up with these regulations is they're in place if anybody goes to the Water Development Board to get grant money for economically distressed areas. And before the Water Development Board will consider giving that kind of grant money, the county has to have adopted those model subdivision regulations. So I think that's why a lot of people have passed them. That may be something y'all may want to consider backing off of, is those requirements. And I guess the reason being, if the hardest part of them I found is if, let's say water is not available, they can't get a commitment from the water company to provide water for the build out. One option is to say, well, we've got big lots, we're gonna let each owner of the lots drill their own private wells. In order for that to happen, under the requirements of these regulations we've adopted, the Water Development Boards, they have to go out and drill a test well and get all kinds of depths of testing information, safety information on that water, basically prove up that water, and then have an engineer or a hydrogeologist certify that this water meets minimum state requirements and it's enough to serve this subdivision for 30 years. That's tough. That's something we almost don't meet with a public works. So something we might get into later, but just a heads up on that.
And back to the topographical survey, can they use that information that's already there for their application? and get by with it, you
Like
know?
next door where they did it,
Yeah, well, like the data that's already out there.
they can, the problem we run into it, I've got some really technical people, Jeremy's one of them, Jeremy Overby. He knows how to work those computers and take this kind of format, put it in this kind of file, and put it in this format. He hasn't figured out how to do it.
Okay.
It can be done, and you're free to do it, but, unless you're set up to do it and handle that kind of massive amount of data, it's gonna be hard to do. But they can do it, anybody can go do it, if you've got the technical expertise to do it. I know next door, we actually found a company who was providing it for the developers, and we contacted them on behalf of the county and said, hey, what would you charge the county to do the whole county? That way it's available. We charge the developer a nominal fee to do it, and really the purpose of that fee is just so when they do a new flyover and we want to get it updated, is to be able to fund that. But the whole county didn't cost $3,000 next door.
Really?
Yeah, see, that's what that guy that I've been dealing with, he was so, complaining about was that topographical survey
That's honest.
gonna cost bukus of money, and it's only 15 acres.
Yes.
And that was the part he was trying to avoid. I don't see how you need that on 15 acres, you know? He's dividing it into 4.
For us to do it as a survey firm, 15 acres topographic survey, you're probably looking upwards of $15,000.
That's exactly what he told me. And he said it was really a big issue
It is
with
huge.
the person that's paying for it, you know? But, so are we, I don't know what I'm trying to ask here, but on the smaller tracks like that, I mean, is it also necessary for that to be part of it? I
That's
mean,
up to y'all. And that's something we could provide input on, and I think maybe a discussion is ahead on that.
And the topographical survey, that's to prevent, you know, like flooding or people building in low lying, is that?
A little sort of tied to that.
Yes, sir.
For the most part, people are not developing in floodplains, there's plenty.
Yes, sir.
But we want to see, when I'm reviewing it, I want to have a good feel of overlaying on what does this subdivision look like with respect to the topography? Are there concerns like creeks, hills and hollers, ponds, we've got concentrated drains, how's it gonna flow off? How's it gonna get to the neighboring property? Are we gonna have to it's just a general review of how does this look?
Yeah, 'cause
The,
even on a small survey like that,
we're still.
the guy up front, he can send water to the guy in the back, you
That's
know?
right.
I mean, it can happen anywhere.
And it's
where
not
it
so
affects.
much that, it's when you concentrate. When it was coming to him, sheet flow, just running across the top of the ground, that's one thing. But when you develop it, you tend to concentrate those flows. And you give folks a reason to complain downstream. A responsible engineer is gonna mitigate that. And, I'm gonna say all engineers are responsible, so they're gonna have to mitigate that, but I wanna see how they do, because I don't want to allow them to do something on behalf of the county that, like I say, when the lawsuits go to flying, we all get served. We've all got to defend ourselves. The argument next door regarding the topographic survey is they didn't have a good level of confidence in the topographic maps. Topographic maps, their contours are at 10-foot intervals. So they'll have a 300-foot contour, and then they'll have a 310-foot contour, 320, and so on. Their way of looking at it is if we require a tighter interval, they can't use the topographic maps, and they have to go get that data. Good argument, but I think we found a good solution over there. And that's something we might look at. But in the meantime, we'll pull the developers aside and tell them, say, look, here's the way a lot of folks have been addressing it. And we'll give them the name of the companies that can transpose that data for them. They're still gonna pay about $1,500 probably to have that done. It's a heck of a lot
A lot cheaper than
better than
15,000.
getting it done topo. And the problem with that topo is most of the time, you don't need all of that to build this subdivision. It's just a wasted cost.
And we
That's
don't
the
want
way we
to
can work with the developers.
be, yes,
It benefits everyone.
yes, sir, we don't want to be a burden to development for sure, but we do want to protect the, that's the whole reason why we did the subdivision regulations is for protection of the people, so.
And for a large number of people.
Yeah.
This guy I'm dealing with, he's an individual landowner wanting to sell 15 acres and lot it up into 4 pieces. So, I think he thought he could just go in there and chop and be done with it. But now that this is in place, then it's making a total different view on it.
Yes.
So,
Variances have been a hard spot. A lot of folks are they're going to request, you're going to see requests for, will you give me a variance for these topographic contours? And, my warning on that is, if you don't have an extenuating circumstance to grant a variance, you might as well, and you want to grant it, you basically said, we're ready to change the regs. If you give it to this guy,
then it's
the
open.
next one, they know how to follow the trail and get the same variance. And that, we want to treat all the developers the same.
Yes.
We don't want to give any an advantage over the other. So bonding and letters of credit have been a tough spot. I know we ran into that a little bit with
Yes, sir.
the Lakeland Ranch. Developers, particularly the small ones, which we're gonna see a lot coming out of the woodwork with the land prices like they are, and the development pressure on, if you've got 10 acres, 15 acres of land, that you can divvy it up and basically retire from there. You're gonna do it. But you're not gonna be set up to get bonded, to make sure that the infrastructure gets done, and that bonding has been a hard spot. Just as something as simple as a letter of credit in lieu of bonding, that was a hard spot. I don't know what a letter of credit looks like. Y'all probably don't know what it looks like.
Do now. We both do now on this one.
I would caution you that there's a possibility that, in circumstances like that, and we may run into some legal circumstances, and I'm gonna recommend that, hey, there's a lot of law reference here, or there's some, insurance or letter of credit issues that you may need to talk to another consultant, such as an attorney or a banker or something like that. It's out of my control, out of my expertise. I'm gonna say so, because I want y'all to get good advice and not use advice. So, Judge asked a while ago about our review team, typical process. I talked about me and Jeremy. I've also got Ben Miller, I wrote his name on here. He's a landscape architect. We don't keep him completely busy only as a landscape architect. He's a great asset for us. He's very sharp. He's good at reading regulations. And I'm trying to pull him in a little bit of this and try to get some flexibility for me and Jeremy for reviewing these things. So I've got another team member there at the office. I have available to me just within shouting distance. I've got 4 civil engineers there in the office, including Pat. I guess y'all know Pat Oates. Okay, Pat's my boss. He runs the engineering survey department. Been around for a long time, seen a lot of instances. And amongst the 5 of us civil engineers, we've all seen a lot of things, and we've got a lot of experience to draw on there. So we've got those resources available. But probably the most important resource available in doing these is a couple of surveyors. We've got a survey team. Our surveyor sits 15 feet from me there in the office. And they're great resources. I can go to them and say, hey, is this normal that you know, as far as site and original surveys are not put in place at the beginning, just survey questions. But they're a great resource to call on. So they're on item 6. Any other questions that on what we've gone over so far? I know it's
I'm
probably
gonna
like
have
three.
trouble when you finish.
Yes, ma'am. Our subdivision regulations are not perfect. And we'll probably all be gone and it still won't be perfect. We're still gonna be working to make things better. I just wanted to, go over a few things regarding those and that item A. Like I said a while ago, if you grant a variance without a good cause, you've effectively changed your regulations. Because you can expect, you can expect to give it to everybody else who asks for it. So, we need to keep that in mind. We will be asked for variances. You just look at them on their own merits. I'll provide your recommendation. I'm not gonna wanna take a side on it, y'all don't want me to. We'll find a middle ground in there. That book I brought with me, that's my copy. I've got it flagged up. When I find something of concern that I've got with regulations, something missing, something that duplicate or conflicts within itself or something needs more attention, I'll note it.
Yeah.
And so when y'all update those regulations, y'all want my input, I'll gather those up and say, here they are. I recommend you consider this. And, if it's something that needs to be addressed immediately, I'm gonna go ahead and let Kelly know, hey, we need to fix this at our next opportunity. I know when we separate out the tiers in there, we need to say, look, if it's not a tier 2, it's a tier 1, or vice versa. We've got a little bit of a gap in there, but I'll keep notes of those. So when y'all get ready to modify them, and I assume it'll go through a public comment period, let everybody have input on it, and then we'll adopt changes to it. But we don't want to do it every time we find a mistake, just because, sort of lose track of which one's current, and might look at so many copies. But we'll do that, and don't never hesitate to holler at me if you got any questions on it. Sometimes I'll get calls early on when you meet with the developers. Usually I'm not involved in that process. Don't have a job set up, I can't deal with it. But if y'all got questions, call me. I'll mark it down, and if it becomes a job, I'll go back and get that time. Otherwise, if y'all got questions, don't hesitate to call me.
I bug you all the time.
Yes, sir. Oh,
Now,
we need to be careful when we're modifying that regulation. There's a tendency when you find a certain instance to want to go in there and say, I want to address this. That way we're not have that confusion anymore. You be careful that we don't walk over something else, because at the end of the day, if you say, you got one spot that says your setback sideline setback is 5 feet, and another one says it's 10 feet, I can only hold that developer to the least restricted. And that's, you go to cherry picking and putting statements in here and there, you need to be real careful that you're not walking on top of something else that, if you change it everywhere in that regulation. So, we just need to be careful with that. If y'all think I'm being too tough, let me know. As I see it, my job on these is, to keep y'all straight on these regulations. Y'all set the law, I'm the policeman. Let me be the bad guy. If it's something that y'all want to help the developer out, I want to be right. So y'all can say, I'd like to do it, but my engineers read it this way. Let me be the bad guy. I'll be glad to do that.
Yes, sir. And I think we need to take a look at, the water like you're talking about in the topographic survey, because like you're saying, those can be burdensome to a developer, and we don't want to drive people, away. We want them to develop, but we want them to, at least have protection for the people that are buying the properties. So, but yeah, that's probably something we need to take a look at in the future.
The only other thing, and I just want to make note of this, with us reviewing the regulations, that sort of puts it in effect, if we have a developer who wants to do something, here in Tyler County and want to use us as their engineer, that's a problem. Yes. So, we're basically taking ourselves off the table by doing the regulation review for it. I mean, our focus is on helping governmental authorities, not private developers. We do private development, but, I hope nobody comes to us wanting us to do a subdivision farm in Tyler County, because we basically excuse ourselves from the privilege of being able to do that, so. But, again, we appreciate the opportunity to work for you on it. Hope we can build a good relationship.
Yes, sir, I appreciate you. You've helped me, guide me through this whole process, and I appreciate you.
I'm learning it too.
Well, I am too. We're learning together.
I can't quote the regulations, and usually I always got it right here under my desk ready to pull out.
Yes,
So a lot of times you come with I might be fumbling around a little bit before I get to the answer, but I'll get it.
I appreciate
And
you.
sometimes if it's an opinion, I'll speak, it's an opinion.
Yeah.
And, my thing is, let's keep y'all straight on the regulations, make sure we're playing fair to all players.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all for giving me the time to come. I just felt we need to get together and talk about this, make
Yes,
sure we're marching.
And I appreciate you.
If I could have told y'all one thing today, it was make sure that those applications and all the information comes through Kelly. That's.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Throw it on Kelly.
Y'all got any questions come up? I don't know. I'm busy. Okay, you'll do that?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And maybe you can answer questions that Kelly and I have. So appendix Q in our regulations says subdivision development fees.
Okay.
I don't think you have appendix Q on there. Do you?
I do.
Okay,
It's old fees.
okay.
So, yeah, and so this was, I guess, submitted by Mr. Bass, Paul Bass.
No, ma'am. That's, when I called Mr. Bass and asked him about that, he said we could, bring it through court and add those fees.
Okay. Well, so I guess, so one of my questions is the difference between the development fees and the engineer fees. So engineer fees, I'm thinking all of that money goes toward paying the engineer. And whatever, let's say, somebody's paid $4,000 and your bill might be $2,000. So I'm hearing that the auditor's office would refund whatever's left over from the engineering fees.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so now we found these development fees.
Okay.
So next time, somebody files an application, we would charge them, let's say it's the 10 acres. We would charge them $4,000 plus, and I don't know, they tier 1 or tier 2, so what's the difference there, tier 1, tier 2?
A tier 1 is almost a minor plat.
You know,
Am I right?
The tier one, they lay streets and roads out, and then also they have parks laid out for the development, where tier 2 is more just the land. Like, for
The
instance,
one I was
like
talking
the
about.
one he was talking about, see, he'd still have to do an application, but it'd be a tier 2 application. So that, when, he's gotta do a tier 2 application for that plat, because he was going by the old system, and he's gotta go through a tier, am I correct on that? He's still gotta go through a tier 2 application, and that's not laying out roads and streets, but it's property adjoining, like you said, a flag lot. That property will have to join the public road, which makes it a tier 2, but the tier 1s have streets and roads laid out within, correct?
Tier 1 is the most restricted.
Yes.
It's where they build an
And
infrastructure.
tier 2 is leased.
And more than 4 lots.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And, your tier 2 is your easy one. So if they have no infrastructure and they just got 4 lots, it should be just a tier 1.
So the Lakeland Ranch is like
It's
We
gonna
would
be-
charge them 4,000 plus 750. So
Yes,
that
ma'am.
would be 4,750, and the county gets to keep the 750, and then the 4,000 part some of that can be refunded to them.
Yes, ma'am.
And then
anything that's left-
The one that had the 4 lots, so they're a tier, 2, and so, but it's 15 acres, and so theirs is gonna be 4,000 plus 500, 4,500.
But their cost is not gonna be near, I mean, they'll, even if they put that money up, their cost isn't gonna be anywhere near what,
What they have to put up.
yeah,
So that's where.
So they're
it would
gonna
come
get
back
a
into
larger
the
refund
Yeah.
as far as this part.
correct, Jed? The tier twos are,
Tier 2 is gonna be easier.
yeah,
But you said, now, 50, just because it's 15 acres does not exclude it from being a tier 2, right? I think it's just no infrastructure and no more than 4 lots.
yeah, it's
and
got the
a
lot
tier
amount
2.
on there.
Don't think the size of the lot matters in y'all's.
Hmm.
Tier 2 should be a lot easier to review, a lot simpler to review
Yes.
than Tier 1. Tier
Well,
1
see, the
we've got engineering plans.
The engineering fee, filing fees, it says subdivisions larger than 10 acres or 10 lots, but
Ooh. Y'all have already passed those, haven't
Yes,
yes, sir.
you? Y'all got those next door.
yes, sir.
The way theirs is broken down, rather than a tier 1 and a tier 2, they don't have tiers. It says if the lots are if the subdivision is greater than 10 acres
Okay,
or greater than 10 lots, then they charge one fee, one deposit. And if it's less than both of those, they charge 2,000.
That's
That
what it
needs
is.
to, yes, ma'am, that needs to
Okay.
be modified to, the 2,000 would be your second tier. The 4,000 would be your first tier.
yeah, when I talked to them, I thought that was kind of high on the tier 2, but
Well,
Is that something
the
we need
tier
to go
2
back-
says up to 10 acres.
In y'all's regulations?
now 10 acres are,
This engineering
we're
fee.
exempt at 10 acres. Or there you can file for
Yeah, they only have to do a subdivision if all the lots are greater than 10 acres.
them.
So that, in that case, it's just between them and the county clerk.
Subdivisions up to 10 acres or 10 lots is 2,000. Subdivisions larger than 10 acres or larger than 10 lots, 4,000. And then here's an RV or tiny home park, 3,000.
I think I would modify that to take the 10 acres out.
Okay,
Because if you've got lots, all the lots are greater than 10 acres, they're not going through the review process. They bring it, they get their surveyor, get their attorney, draft it out.
That
Okay.
needs to be go through court and change.
Yes,
it.
sir.
Okay, so if we take the 10 acres out, should it read subdivisions up to 10 lots is 2,000?
I think I would scratch all of them. That's that. Can I write on this?
Yeah.
I would change this to section tier subdivisions. And I would change this to first tier. And forget the acreage, yes ma'am, just forget that acreage.
And the RV and tiny home
I
park.
remove
Okay.
that, those are tough.
Um,
Y'all haven't got any of those yet.
No.
okay,
So
so
that's had lots of people call.
Yes, sir.
Well, here's the thing, the trend right now, the generation that's coming out and starting homes, residences, they don't care to build these permanent homes. They'll live in a tiny home, they'll live in an RV, have the freedom to hitch up and move somewhere else just like that. There's a lot of demand for RVs. At
Yes,
some point, y'all's are written right now in the regulations for a highly developed RV park. There's an opinion out there that, we don't want our RV park to be a Walmart parking lot. We don't want much pavement, we don't want to clear it off, we don't want to break the land to put this development in there. Once they break the land, basically clear it and reshape it.
Okay, I have two more questions.
Okay, we can talk about that later on the RV park.
Okay, the subdivision development fees that the county gets to keep, is that some type of flag fee that it can only be spent for certain things, or it just goes into our general fund?
I would have to refer you to the local government code.
Yeah, we need to talk to,
You're going
what's her name over there, in Polk County? The lady we talked to when we did all this?
Terry?
I think it's Carrie. She handles it through the judge's office.
Okay,
I
we can call her.
rather than recreate the wheel, it's probably a good idea, but those are.
Because that's who we
The
talked
local
to.
government code does stipulate, how you gotta handle all these fees. I would appreciate it, and I haven't, anything but my fees, I really haven't gotten.
Okay.
If you could keep mine purely simple.
Yeah, the auditor and I think we've got that worked out.
Yes.
Because I like to be able to notify y'all if we've gone over on those fees, to notify y'all before I recommend it to you. That way my letter, I say, look, as I show it, they've gone over their deposit. We recommend you get that money in hand before we approve it.
Because one of our developers, he was gonna be filing some more plats or applications, and he was like, okay, what do I need to write the check for, because I know I got a refund coming. But, Jackie suggested if they paid the entire fee up front, it'd just be better to do that instead of figuring out the differences. And so she can have a paper trail on the refund part.
Well, especially with multiple phases.
Mhm.
And I would
How many
handle
phases
that
are there
with-
altogether?
You
This
put
is
your
section 3, so I don't know how
$40
many
down
more.
for phase 2, and then I will refund your phase 1.
Yes.
That's completely
That's what she said that. Okay, my last question. So on this appendix Q, Mr. Bass had put in here replat and recording of approved plat, $250. So, years ago, and then when you go to our engineering review filing fees, it's got file plat $100. Well, the $100 was adopted by the Commissioners Court several years ago. For several years, we've been charging $100.
Okay.
So that would need to be changed to be
I
the
think
same,
so.
or,
It sounds to me like you're giving two different prices for the same thing.
yeah,
Which
that's
they're
what
gonna
it's looking
say,
like to
the government
me.
is ours.
So, when you make these changes, or we need to either go up to $250 or.
Make them both. But that's the problem with having things, the same thing written twice in regulations, things you get changed. You left that other part the same, and you're still having the least restrictive on the
Which would be
least cost. That's an ongoing battle.
Do you remember anything else, Kelly, you have questions about?
This thing with that tier 1, tier 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see any requirements, other than if they're greater than 10 acres per lot, you have to go through the.
Yeah, and this subdivision stuff can be about like Greek. So, me and Jeb have talked a lot about, all this stuff going on, but
He's always so good to help us.
yeah, I am just so glad that you're available on all this.
Well, it is my privilege.
Yes, sir.
If we do different type of developments, we're gonna find spots in the regulations we need to polish.
Yes, sir.
Just take it as it comes.
Yes, sir.
RV parks gonna be the funnest, you know?
And I would like to get with you on these, on the topographical and the
Yeah, I probably had 4 phone calls on RV parks in the last month.
I would say this on RV parks, although they're in these regulations for subdivision, we don't treat them like a plat. We don't get a plat file for an RV park because that tract of land that the developer's making an RV park on, he has complete control of. He's not selling it. So I think it's improper to put it in our plat records. It's his. Now, what I would say, if I want to make a suggestion on that, we got a two-step process. They got an infrastructure development plan, which they bring to us everything they're going to do. Then they go and do it, and before they can occupy it, sort of a certificate of occupancy is a certificate of completion. The only thing I would change that from next door is I would make them renew that certificate of completion on a regular basis. Otherwise, you wind up with a mess. You've got to hire an attorney to get out of. But if you make it to where we have to relook at it, go in there and inspect it and say, okay, we're gonna renew your operating permit, if you will. I think that's gonna help. Otherwise, they get real comfortable and wind up with 10 floor on windows, and junk and trash. And, somebody's living there, they're gonna have yard tools, they're gonna have all kinds of stuff, and it's just gonna be a mess. So, that's gonna be, parts.
Yeah. Yes, sir, there, you can look up and down, going down 69, and then you get into Livingston over there, you can see where they're popping up.
Yeah, you can go look at the unregulated one in Fred. Oh.
Yeah.
It was put in before the rules were in place, and it's just helter-skelter. I mean,
Well,
doghouse joined to the RV and.
yeah. Well, I would say if they're gonna have an extended occupancy on there, I would recommend they have a little storage building for each track. One put the junk in, their rake, their lawn chairs, or whatever. Most of the developers are good, but there are gonna be a few bad eggs out there.
We've got most of one of the phone calls I'm getting are people who just wanna move out of the city and come to the country and create a business. And so, they're complaining that they have to pull in rock for the trailers to sit on, and that they have to pour a slab to have facilities built on. And they just wanted to put some electrical outlets and let somebody pull up and plug in, basically is what they're.
That goes back to when they get out of that metroplex, they think, well, there's no rules out there. We do what we want.
Yeah, then you run into sewer problems and then health and safety problems, if you have a fire, not being able to get the fire trucks down there, there's all kinds of issues that I've, looking into all the regulations, it's getting some hairy
We'll cross
situations.
that bridge when we get there.
Yes.
Unless y'all wanna hit it before, well,
I think we're good. Learned a lot. I appreciate you coming, for
I
sure.
appreciate y'all having me.
I like the opportunity to just put the face with the voice,
Yeah.
because I've talked to you a couple times on the phone.
Yeah, he
I'll
probably
get
hears,
out once.
he probably hears more from me than he wants to.
Well, when you talk to someone, you try to envision, well, I wonder what this person looks like.
Well, what you have to picture?
Hmm?
What you have to picture?
Don't answer
Well, there's no way I could have known what you look like, but you fit the mold.
I'm gonna take the half full version of that and go with it.
Kid, I appreciate
Leave
it,
it
sir. I
general.
sure do.
Somebody told me last night on this prayer meeting, they said, well, it was, he said it some way that it was definitely different without you here. And I said, well, I'll take the half full glass every day I would go with it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, just different.
Well, thank you, sir.
Anything else for Kim? So we ready to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Thanks, all in favor? And we'll stand adjourned at 11:24.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll give me a grandbaby.
Yes, sir. We're-
And, see you guys.
Oh, very lucky.
He's in good hands from what I can say.